Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hello, kids. Thanks for being here today. This is the Aspen City Council work session for May 6th, 2024. Normally we take care of proclamations at a regular meeting, but we wanted to have this one today because we have, I believe the kids parade is coming is it this week? Next 2 weeks. So we wanted ample opportunities to let everybody know that that's coming. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. Why don't we, would you like to come up and say a couple words? Why don't you? Yep.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Jim. This wonderful group of kids is here to help us kind of start the month of the young child. We wanted to thank you so much for all of your support for early childhood. We have some bags that are left over from our in-service that we give to teachers, so if you would like one, please take one. And just Miss Dawn, Aspen Mountain Tots, thank you for bringing your great group of kids to come and help us start this beautiful month celebrating young children. Yeah. Do you guys want to come sit up here?
Yep. We want you to come up here. Can we get all the kids? Come right up here. Come on here. That way you're going to be on TV. Come on. And we got some fun stuff for you too. So come on up here and we're going to have some fun. Yeah. All right. So this is May, and every May we celebrate young kids just like yourselves. Okay? So I'm going to read something for our community, and then we're going to give you guys some fun stuff to play with, all right? All right. So this is a proclamation of the City of Aspen, Colorado, incorporated in 1881, whereas Kids First Early Childhood Resource Center and Pitkin County Child Care Providers are celebrating the month of the young child in May. Whereas by raising awareness about the value of high-quality early childhood programs available for all children and families in our community, and whereas the City of Aspen thrives when our kids thrive because they are our future workforce, leaders, and community members, that's you guys, we all have a role to play in preparing our kids for the future. Whereas building a healthy human brain is a process that begins before birth and continues into adulthood, a strong foundation early on increases the probability that a child will be socially and emotionally healthy as well as physically healthy, right? Right. Whereas given the appropriate learning opportunities that high-quality early childhood programs provide, children require language, mathematical, social, emotional, artistic, and physical skill development that strengthens the foundation for success in life embraced by the Aspen idea of mind, body, and spirit. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the mayor, the city council, and the citizens of Aspen hereby declare May 2024 as the month of the young child. Can you all clap? Now, just a couple words from me, and I'll open it up to other council members as well, if you like. I think we all agree with the words that I just read here. Not only that, a previous council made our child care and of a top priority here in our community. This council has carried that goal and that initiative forward. We all, as a community, recognize that we are probably best measured by the strength of our childhood education and how we bring up our next generation. So it is important to so many of us. We want to say thank you, obviously, when we acknowledge this month of the young child. We want to acknowledge and thank the people that are the providers, the teachers, the parents as well. But everybody in our community has a role in how we raise our fine young Aspenites. I invite any other council members if they have any comments. The month of the young child.
I want to thank everyone for coming. We appreciate seeing you in here. You're our favorite visitors.
You are our favorite visitors. And because do we have a question, or are you waving to yourself?
Everyone, Mr. Mayor, needs a chance to wave and see themselves.
Can you see yourself wave?
And Dory, can you switch us up to the kids, the other camera?
Can they get that one? There you are. Yes. And because we want to celebrate the month with you kids, we have a couple of special things for you. Who likes bubbles? You like bubbles? Okay, these are some big time bubbles, but why don't you all come up? We have some bubbles for you. We also have some sunglasses if anybody needs sunglasses. Does anybody want one? Do you like green? Do you like green? There you go.
About some glasses.
Does anybody know who SpongeBob is? Does anybody want some SpongeBob sunglasses? These match your shirt. Here, try those on. Let's everybody see those on. Perfect look for you. And look, these are blue like your jacket. Uh-oh.
Yeah, nice.
There you go, Ward. You got your wish.
Yay.
There you go.
Should I keep these
Okay,
guys? What do you
kids,
think?
put the
Do these look
bubbles
good on me?
back. Put the bubbles back.
Huh? Do they fit me? You want these on?
If you want a pair of glasses as well, kids, go right ahead.
Don't really fit you. Why don't you try the SpongeBob ones then?
There you go. Thank you for coming down. Craig.
Come back soon. Back for public comment.
Bubbles are loose, kid.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that looks so good. Here's your bubbles.
And when is the parade is?
I think it's on the 22nd. I don't remember.
I think it is a Wednesday. Okay. 22nd. Wednesday the 22nd. 10 o'clock.
Yeah, green means on, right? Yep.
All right.
While you're setting up, do you want me to go
Wednesday the
ahead?
22nd, 10 a.m. at the fire station, parading to the fountain. Come downtown for a good time. Sure.
Do any of you want a hard copy of the old and the new or both?
Always use an extra.
Thank you. All right. So with that, Diane Foster is handing out some of our affordable housing strategic plans and the update. And that is the first item on the rest of our agenda.
Okay, great. Well, this is a tough act to follow, but we'll try our best. So, I'm Liz Axberg, Housing Policy Analyst in the City Manager's Office, and I'm presenting an update to the 2022 through 2026 Affordable Housing Strategic Plan. And
Diane Foster, Assistant City Manager. Thank you.
Yeah, so today we are actually bringing a comprehensive update of this plan. So adopted in 2022 by City Council at the time. And since then, usually we've just done updates on the action items to just cover how we are making progress. But when we were reviewing the plan recently, we decided it warranted a more comprehensive update, which I will get into what that entails in just a slide. So why did we decide to do a comprehensive update? And so the original plan had a 500 unit goal, and we were looking at this and it just wasn't as attainable anymore for several different reasons. There was just changes in timeline, changes in the unit goal itself. We had different action items. So we decided to just take a total look at the whole entire document and reflect where we're at right now with affordable housing. And so today we're going to review this whole entire new document, and we gave you a copy of the old one and the new one. In the main focus area, while we're going to go over this entire document page by page, the main focus area is going to be that council goal, which has changed, also the action items within. And today we're really looking for feedback on more of the larger concepts within the plan, and you're welcome to ask questions throughout, and which we will take slide by slide. And if you see typos or wording changes that you'd like to see, please email those to me instead, because we do have a lot of content to go through. There's now 17 action items. So while it's great to ask questions, some things also it's fine if you just send it my way. And I also would like to just emphasize that right now where we're at with this update is that it's still very much a working document as well. And so the plan is to get your feedback, and we're gonna go through another round of edits with this, and then eventually bring this back to you for a resolution for council to adopt the updated strategic plan. And yeah, and also once we adopt it, we'll have a nicer printout for you as well. But now just to show you that we're still making edits, and we'll take them after today, so we can do that. One more thing before I get into this page-by-page update of the strategic plan, I just want to acknowledge all the collaborative work in the realm of affordable housing that happens at the city, and all these folks that contributed to this update as well. So it happens across about 6 different departments, and we all work together to make this happen. So, and a lot of these people are in this room as well. So as you have questions that pop up about specific action items, they might come up to the table to answer that question for you. So yeah, and so now going forward, we're gonna start with the update. And again, we're just taking it page by page. First, we're gonna start with this chunk of pages, 6 through 10. And you're welcome to follow along with the handout I gave as well. And also taking notes. And so most of these pages are actually unchanged, mostly because these represent the foundation of the plan. So it has to do with where is affordable housing going to be located, whom is affordable housing for, and then the 2 that we did update, but more just to show where we're at now in 2024, would be financial capacity, which is just updated numbers based on what we've collected since before it only went out to 2023. And also our staff capacity, because we have hired a few new staff that work towards affordable housing, including myself, who was not hired in 2022 when the plan was implemented, and APSHA also hired a compliance analyst to start bolstering their compliance program even more so. And so since most of these pages are unchanged, I do want to just give a moment if there's anything you'd like to ask about this section or add. Yeah, Bill?
Hi, Liz. Hi, Diane. Thanks for this. One thing I wanted to point out and make sure that everyone understands is that you did make a pretty major update on page 7 on where will new units be located. And you added that there's a new priority and an openness to have new units outside of the city limits.
This page hasn't changed.
So that didn't change, because you said this is a change from prior policy. I guess that was another thing. But I did want to point out that I'm very supportive of that in exploring housing partnerships and housing creation opportunities outside of the city limits. I don't want to be hamstrung by the urban growth boundary or the Aspen city limits at all. I think that that's a very limiting factor, and I'm very supportive of that. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yep.
Thanks.
Definitely no change on that one.
Funny enough, I was going to mention something similar as far as having a 3rd priority and the 4th being the 3rd one right now, where the 3rd priority is along bus routes and like along Highway 82, just because it can be outside the urban growth boundary, but as long as it's along a bus route or the highway, then it honestly makes sense for me to have affordable housing there as well. Along transit centers, whatever it may be.
And Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it to you to, if you want to find out if there's consensus to make a change to a page, to add a priority, those kind of things. That would be helpful, or I can facilitate that if you'd like.
What I'd have to ask you on this specific is transit-oriented development referenced in this housing plan? In another place?
I don't believe that transit-oriented development is specifically identified as a focus, mainly because I think that is very much a discussion that the council has, and staff brings you things as well as our proximity to transit in this community.
So I would put that one in a bike rack for us to kind of discuss later, if that's something that we feel like should be updated and specified in the plan, or where it should fall.
I just add that nationally, that has been recognized and acknowledged as where housing should be, and it's on mass transit corridors, so it's really nothing new for us.
But I'm supportive of adding it specifically into this document.
Thanks, we'll come back to it.
Great. Yeah, we can definitely look into adding that into some of the foundation of the plan then. Anything else to add for these foundational pages here? Okay, and again, like, if you read through this afterwards and you'd like to send more feedback or ideas, you're welcome to send them my way. And so now we're gonna get into the actual action items in the council goal of the plan. So for reference, this is gonna be page 11 of the updated plan. So this is just the updated compiled action plan. In the initial plan, this was a prioritization matrix, and this was collaboratively outlined by council as far as how many units each would yield, the cost, and a variety of different variables that went into the importance of each. And when reviewing this plan, we actually decided to eliminate the priority matrix. Mostly because, as you see here, we added in work groups, and staff across departments, as you saw earlier, are all at the same time working towards each of these action items. And it was difficult to put a ranking on it when there are these specific work groups working towards each action item, as you see here. So that's why we eliminated the priority matrix from the original plan, but still outlined it as far as here's our different categories and here's who's working towards them. And as you can see here as well, I added in the 3 new action items that are in the plan today, which includes community land trusts, which are in the policy section, and we have a deed restriction purchase program, which is in the development neutral section, and also the sustainability of HOA capital reserves in the compliance and sustainability section. And we'll talk about all 3 of those later on as well. One other change that I'd like to highlight is that we just recategorized regional collaboration. Originally, that was a new development item, but now that is in the development neutral section, which we'll talk about later when we go through each action item. Any questions on this page at all? Okay. Great. So then we'll go into the council goal section. So this is this covers a large reason of why we decided to do this comprehensive update. So the original strategic plan went from 2022 to 2026. And now, as you see here in the total revised goal column, it says through 2028. And along with that, at the bottom, originally there was around a 500 unit goal, and that has changed to about almost 330 units. And we have here also how much we've actually achieved since 2022 as well. And just a good highlight there is that we've actually achieved over 100 units since 2022, which is over 20% of the original goal. And with this updated goal, it's over 30% of that. So a lot of great progress has happened, but this total revised goal just reflects some changes in some of the limitations due to timeline, which we'll talk about, and also some changes in direction we've seen. So they'll highlight expiring deed restrictions. The goal on that number has decreased significantly. We achieved all the units in the Burlingame Phase 3 project, which is the bulk of what we've achieved since 2024 now. And another one that's changed a lot was right sizing, just based on seeing uptake in the program so far as we're assessing that. So any questions about our council goal here, or where some of these numbers are changing, which we are going to go over each of these as well. And before I forget, actually, we should talk about also the buy downs or other. So we added that because that wasn't in the original 2022 through 2026 strategic plan, because these are basically the units the city purchases and puts into our employee housing program, and those are still 4 units that we've converted from free market to deed restricted, so something that should still be counted as affordable housing gained as well. So we added those into this as well.
Have those officially been deed restricted? I know we had a conversation about we had the ability to deed restrict them, or at least certain ones that we were contemplating purchasing. I don't know if we ever, at least in my time on council, authorized application of the deed restriction.
And Bill, I think on this one, I think it's, you know, if the school district were to take over units and agree to things like APSHA qualifications and APSHA maximum sales prices and things like that, I think it would be something which, right, the city follows APSHA rules as far as rentals, et cetera. I think we would actually consider it to be a controlled and in the inventory, even if it doesn't have a formal deed restriction on it.
What does this have to do with the school district? I'm sorry.
If the school district were to say, hey, we have preserved these units and we're going to follow APSHA qualifications, and we're only going to charge APSHA maximum rents, that I think we could count that as affordable housing versus a unit that someone buys and sells and rents for whatever they want.
I'm a little lost, Diane, because we're talking about these 4 units that are on this chart as achieved as development neutral. And Liz mentioned that those are units that the city of Aspen has purchased in, I presume, the 505 fund to house city employees. And Liz mentioned that they have been deed restricted to date. And that may have happened prior to my time on council, but I remember discussing the ability to deed restrict those units. I don't remember authorizing deed restricting those.
I did not place deed restrictions on them in the sense of it is a true filed deed restriction. It is included in the lease language instead, so that it offered future councils more flexibility based upon the council table. So we do count it in the inventory because there's a legal instrument that is requiring the suppression of that rent rate based upon APSHA qualifications.
Okay. I think that's important to understand, right, is that those aren't really deed restricted units. They're behaving like deed restricted units.
Correct.
Thanks.
Great. Okay, other changes on the change in council goal, and again, we will dive deeper into why some of these have altered as well. Okay, then we'll keep going through. So now we're just going to be going through it action item by action item to cover the updates to each. And so we're starting with replace expiring deed restrictions. And this is one of the goals that changed the most. And so as you all know, there's around over 300 expiring deed restrictions in Aspen. And many of these are going to be replaced through natural means of turnover. And so it could be APSHA puts a new deed restriction anytime a unit is sold or transferred. And through that method, we've actually updated 2 just through natural means of turnover. The essential repairs program, we've required 2 people to update their deed restrictions as well. And that was something I forgot to mention. This number is actually going to get updated to 5 on expiring deed restrictions, just because one of those was a newer one through the essential repairs program. And then also 1 rental has updated its expiring deed restriction as well. And so with direction, we're temporarily pausing the pursuit of originally 200 units, but this is something we're going to continue to monitor and discuss with council as well. And so that's why there's been a big drop in this unit goal. And again, as long as there's no questions, I'll just keep going through them. So next is the lumberyard project, which you've all been involved in discussions heavily and will continue to be. But this was the second action item on our original strategic plan, and this is part of the reason why our strategic plan is now extended out to 2028, just because of changes in timeline. We're now pushing out achieving the initial units by 2028 instead. And so, as you all know, you've been involved in discussions on, we had entitlements approved for the project in 2023 in the fall, and also the budget for phase 0 construction was approved. And there will be upcoming dates, I'm sure, on council's calendar as this continues to get go down the pipeline. So along with the RFQ that's going to be released this year as well. No other major changes there. Major change with the Burlingame Ranch Phase 3 development is that we've achieved the 79 units. So that was a big, the bulk of our 100 units that we've achieved so far, and this was through a lot of work at the city, and so It's a big moment of celebration to have that one on there. And right now, we're just in HOA onboarding and planning. So,
United achieved.
oh, United, we achieved. Units achieved. Yeah.
Understand.
We'll keep going. Community development policy analysis. So this changed in the strategic plan because when it was initially written, it was before the 2022 moratorium. And so what we've put in here now is how all these ordinances 13 and 14 and all the achievements in that area. And so the big part of this goal is how we can develop and evaluate policy and land use code improvements to support affordable housing. So through ordinances 1314, we started separate review processes for affordable housing projects, zoning districts allowed for single family and duplex units, just identifying more unintended limitations to affordable housing development. Mitigation requirements were increased, fee in lieu was increased, and where we're at with this action item now is just continued evaluation of the impacts of ordinances 1314, continuing to see where else we can support affordable housing development in our land use code. And also we're trying to find more room for collaboration across departments in this realm as well, involving APSHA in the review processes and things in that realm. Yes, Bill?
Thanks, Liz. A few things on this one, and I know Ben's not in the room.
Which I can take note also for Ben to get
That'd be
back
great.
on that question.
Thank you. And some of these points actually span a few of the action items, my questions and points. The first one is you talk about the administrative review path for AH projects, 100% AH projects. Could you, or can we get some information, I guess Ben would probably be best to answer this, about how that's going? You know, how many projects have pursued this so far? What are the what sort of timelines are those applicants experiencing? Is it expedited? Is it efficient? Is it cutting down review times? Is it reducing associated carrying costs? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, so
and
you
I'd like
are
to see
asking,
the
like,
results.
are we measuring the impact of the review process time, if that is working? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I believe there is at least one that is going through this path. Hopefully there's more than one, I don't know. But I think that this is critical, really critical, and I want to make sure that we are making this extremely expedited and reducing the barriers significantly. Otherwise, it's pointless. I guess the next one, on next steps, the third point, you talked about additional dimensional flexibility concepts. I'm not supportive of that. I think that any project of scale, which are the only ones that we, as the city government, I think should be spending any time on individually, would more than likely involve a PUD, so I don't think there's much return on time investment there, so I'm not supportive of that. And then I think overall, this one spans multiple action items. I think overall, the way that we should be thinking about this is how do we encourage affordable housing projects that are either in the pipeline today or could be coming in the future to happen. And there's some pretty significant ones that are out there right now. You know, there's a Park Circle one. There is 218 Main Street or something like that. I think I could be wrong on the address, but somewhere on Main Street, pretty sizable affordable housing project. And like, what can we do as a municipality to get those projects into construction and get them developed? That's a significant addition to the inventory, significant, of brand new units that we don't need to build and we don't need to spend our dollars on necessarily. So what can we do through ComDev, through making their lives easier, making the process simpler. What is it that's causing these projects not to start immediately, and how do we help facilitate that? So I think that's the one that sort of spans multiple action items that I think we should be taking specific action on. Thanks.
Bill, could I ask clarification, Park Circle, are you talking about the Peter Furnell, now Mark Hunt property?
I am.
And as far as I know, there's been nothing brought forward for development on that yet.
I don't know, so what can we do to help facilitate something being brought forward? That's the question. Let's be proactive, not reactive.
And the,
So there's been conversations with the current owner, and there's been no interest in filing they allowed the deed restriction, the entitlements to expire, and they've been encouraged to bring an application forward, and as of now, unless something's happened in the last 2 weeks, that has not occurred.
Okay, well, it's great that we are being proactive. That's news to me, but that's the way that I want us to be thinking, is what can we do to help particularly facilitate partners in private sector developers to take action? Is there something in our process that could be enhanced? Is there a way that we can participate to get these projects going? I think a much better ROI than trying to develop things ourselves.
and just for clarification, so I understand, the one that you mentioned on Main Street, that is the HPC project with 100% affordable.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that was handled administratively, wasn't it?
I think is being. My understanding.
So, he has a couple of questions in there, I think that can be responded to. As far as his item, bullet point number 3, his personal interest is not in that, but it says with council direction. So when would we be looking for council direction for staff to evaluate and potentially propose zoning changes? Meaning it's in here as a next step, but are you putting that in front of us now? Do you want us to weigh in for council direction at this time, or is that coming back to us at another time?
So that is not within the work plan the council has discussed with community development this year. We were told the number one priority was to focus on the development review process in entirety, not for specific applicants. And so that is where a significant amount of our energies are at the moment. So we would need council direction to take this up now for the certain class of applicants, just knowing that while it might expedite for that group, I would anticipate it slows down the other work.
Well, I don't hear a pressing desire to move this up on our priority list. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just wondering if it was coming back at a specific time later. So I'm hearing no, this is just shelved until council brings it back. Mm-hmm. Okay. What I would add to that is it might fall into what Bill was just talking about. If dimensional requirements are something that is slowing that process and making something not attractive for redevelopment, maybe that fits into that category.
And that is in the section of code amendments we're recommending to you, but we're suggesting don't treat affordable housing differently than you would treat other applicants when it comes to some of those things.
Okay.
Keep on going through then. We have another community development item on the certificates of affordable housing program as well. And so, as you all know, this was established in 2010 and has been being reviewed the last couple of years to better serve market conditions that have changed since this program was initially implemented. And so there have been several work sessions with council on the affordable housing program. Community development was working with design workshop as well and has outlined several different possibilities and pathways for this program. And right now where community development is that still working on it and reviewing those options that came up, but there will be an ordinance possibly presented in 2024 on changes, but it also depends on staff capacity right now as well, where we'll get with that.
Question?
Yes, thanks. We do not need to discuss this tonight, but I would like to add it to, under progress or next steps somewhere, the concept of allowing for certificates to be created on existing property, which I don't think it really exists today. We have a lot of.
Right, so that was allowed for 8 units back, I think it's 3 years ago, when a property was purchased from Mark Hunt's MH Development by the Aspen School District. 8 credits, 6 credits, something like that was created in conjunction with that for permanent deed, in exchange for permanent deed restrictions, even though it was already below market priced housing, quite frankly, because of its condition. And so there was a significant investment by the school district into upgrading those properties. And as part of the credits to make the financial package work between the two parties in the real estate transaction, the city agreed to come to the table with credits.
So it's not really codified or.
No, it's very negotiable. It's very negotiable depending upon who the recipient is of that, who's the beneficiary of that deed restriction. So, and at that point, the council felt the school district was an appropriate beneficiary of that discretionary treatment, where they may not feel the same way for, at that time, the conversation was, may not have the same perspective in a for-profit situation compared to essential government service.
I would encourage us to explore this a little bit more, because given that there's no policy around it, I think it precludes the onesie-twosies from really ever happening, because that's a lot for someone who owns a condo somewhere to pursue. But I think it's something we should consider. If someone owns a unit in a free market condominium complex and is interested in deed restricting it, that's a financial sacrifice, and they're not really getting a benefit from it if they're not offsetting development. But if they could be financially rewarded through the means of a credit that they could then sell, I think it's something promising and interesting there. I think that there's a lot of deep thought that needs to be put into this to make sure that we're not creating problematic situations for people, especially where there's multiple units and some are deed restricted, some are free market. But I do think it's a concept worth exploring and discussing.
Bill, the other side of the coin of what you're talking about would be the city putting in place a buy-down program for existing properties that didn't require a property to change hands, looking something like the Veil and Deed program. And in fact, yesterday, I added that to a list of Liz and I keep of stuff we need to talk about. So I think if the council's interested in that, we can work on that a little bit. Given the price of a bedroom, deed restricting existing property is it's an interesting way to go.
Yeah, I think that's the idea, right? Is financially reward somebody to deed restrict the unit in perpetuity, whether they want to sell it or not, or pass it down to somebody or whatever it might be, that's compliant with the rules of the program. You've got to give people a reason to do the outcome, or to create the outcomes that we're looking for. And benevolence isn't it, so.
Can you place that in the short-term bike rack there as well? I think we should come back to that as well at the end of this conversation.
I have it written down, and also I want to say one of the new action items we're going to be talking about is a potential deed restriction purchase program as well, like the Veil and Deed model.
I think
So
they're all
we're going to talk about it
interrelated.
again. Okay,
Thanks.
great. Then we'll continue on. So the next item is our financial resources action item. How can we continue building the much needed financial resources to build affordable housing, purchase land for land banking, and also fund some of the other strategies that we're talking about, like a potential deed restriction purchase program. The biggest change in this action item since 2022, when this plan was implemented, would be the STR tax, which began collections last spring in 2023. And along with that, recently, I think it was just in March, council voiced support for putting the real estate transfer tax and the sales tax on the ballot for November to extend their sunset dates as well.
Council, we understand you haven't given us direction on those 2 items. You asked for additional information, and we're bringing that back this month. So you'll see Pete and I for that soon.
Okay, great.
Question?
I think I just wanted to share my sentiment on this is I'm not sure I like the wording of this, that we're gonna continue seeking establishment of new sources. I'm very grateful of the sources that we have. I'm appreciative of knowing what these other debt issuances are, but I am not really supportive of spending a bunch of staff resources on exploring new sources of funding at the moment. I think we're very blessed with a generous source of funding, and I don't want to go out and spend a bunch of time pursuing significant additional dollars, particularly not from taxpayers.
I think DOLA and federal grants are well worth pursuing.
Thank you. Sarah?
Sure, I just want to remind the council, you have within your authority also to revisit some of your current taxing questions and changing how those dollars are allocated. Some of those are at the council's table discretion, some of them require voter approval. But you do have the ability, for example, to revisit real estate transfer tax distributions and to what programs. You can pose a question to the voters about that. You also have the ability to pose a question to your voters about lodging taxes, which are explicitly permitted for housing, affordable housing under state statute. So I don't want to take those opportunities off the table. I think this is a very ambitious plan, and the council has some pretty big sites that quite frankly may need more financial resources than even what the current real estate transfer tax for affordable housing and the sales tax, two sales tax sources bring in. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
All right. Next action item is on voluntary downsizing or move, AKA right sizing action item. So there are around, based on the last affidavit we did, there was around 400 underutilized bedrooms in the APSHA inventory. So the idea here, as you all know, is right sizing is to effectively allocate those bedrooms and swap houses. And so in April 2023 is when APSHA started their right sizing pilot program. And since then, 2 total swaps have occurred. One was through that pilot program, and one was through the Burlingame units that were set aside for right sizing. So where we're at right now with this program is APSHA staff have made a few changes to the program to try to make it work better for APSHA owners, but also staff are still researching the viability of providing incentives for a program like this as well. And there is a question right now whether or not some deed restrictions actually prohibit the ability to provide a financial assistance over the max sales price for a unit. So, yeah, Bill?
Surprised it's me again. I think this is a great program, and I think this is another very potentially fruitful opportunity to create more units and create more productive units. And I just can't encourage us enough to get these incentive structures in place immediately and get this program going. I'm frustrated with the pace at which it's happening. I want to do a pilot program and try it and see how it goes and allocate a certain amount of dollars towards it and test it out with no long-term commitment on it. And based on the results of that pilot program, we can learn from it and enhance it. But this can create units today that can become productive units for the community and solve a lot of angst amongst existing owners that are not super productive in our workforce anymore. It's a win-win for our community. We should be putting a lot of effort into getting this done immediately. Thanks.
And I'll just speak for a moment. Matthew and I have spent a lot of time on this, and he's done a lot of work on it. On his behalf, there is a lot of work going into it and has been what we ran into, right? There's been surveys to understand some pilot programs to try different versions of it, whether it be Burlingame priority or straight up swaps. What we quite literally ran into recently was what Liz described as a legal prohibition to pay an owner more than max sales price. So that exists in the deed restriction for a number of reasons. APSHA has seen things happen like someone says, oh, well, you can buy my unit for this much money, the max sales price, and then you have to pay me $50,000 for all my furniture, right? So that exists in the deed restriction to prohibit those things that APSHA has quite literally seen happen. And what we're doing right now is Matthew asked for a written legal opinion on this, and we are working with the APSHA attorney to say, okay, how about this use case? And he has provided some windows where it might be possible, as long as we're providing equal opportunity within classes of people and protected classes of people. That's a high-level view of it. I guess the bottom line is we are working on it and actively working on it. Thanks.
Appreciate there are challenges, but let's get it done.
I do think we just need to clarify there too, is that this is within the purview of the APSHA board. The council's purview is whether to be a funding partner based upon the program developed and approved by the APSHA board, just to have some clarity on roles. Thanks.
And it has been brought up at the APSHA board.
Great.
Continuing on, partnerships. So City of Aspen is always looking for partnership opportunities, and in the past updates, we've mentioned the Forest Service lot, still under negotiation with details underway. And the thing with this action item, and which we'll talk about with land banking too, is as negotiations are underway, confidentiality is important. But the main thing here is City of Aspen staff are always looking for partnership opportunities as they come up. APSHA compliance. So APSHA upholds a compliance program to make sure that everyone in our units are qualified. And some of the ongoing efforts we do with this is the biennial affidavit, where owners attest that they're qualified. So we just completed the 2023 affidavit. And along with this, we did hire a compliance analyst, Jackie, who has now completed over 120 audits of APSHA owners and have found over 95% to be in compliance as well, which is really great. And of course, most people that when they're found out of compliance, they just have to go back into compliance in that case usually. So
Liz, one thing on this. First of all, like really great work, I think, in the last couple of years on compliance in general. I think it's critical to the integrity of the program, so keep it up. Appreciate it. You mentioned the hearing officer in here somewhere, and I'm not sure where the best action item to place this is, but I do think we need a professional, unbiased hearing officer, and that our current situation is not appropriate. And so I encourage both staff and APSHA staff and the APSHA board to evaluate the choice that has been made and find someone that is more appropriate, more neutral, more unbiased for our community. Thanks.
So I'm going to refer that to our two APSHA board members at the table. Staff's not going to take any action on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've had discussions along those lines, and it's not a new subject. We've been looking at that in the course of upheld non-bias.
Next action item, also an APSHA one, is policy actions to increase the number of available units. This is sort of the rest of the APSHA catch-all item. And this covers a lot of how we are bringing regulation changes to continue improving the program, maximizing the number of individuals in a unit. So regulation changes are brought to the APSHA board as needed. And a big change since 2022 would probably be the addition of home track and how much now we are able to leverage home track data more to make informed decisions, policy changes, and regulation changes. Since that system was just implemented in 2019, it's gotten a lot more time to get built out and understand how we can best use it. And there is some overlap with this item as well, as mentioned, with right sizing, that has to do with this, and continued compliance, of course, as well. And other regulation changes that have helped this, such as since this was implemented, same with the change in dependent age as well. Questions? I'll keep going. Next is the sustainability of APSHA deed restricted housing. And so we did, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a new action item that specifically focuses on HOAs, so I'll talk about that one later, but staff decided that these two were separate enough to split into two different action items now. And so this is just acknowledging that we have a limited number of affordable housing units in the inventory. So many are aging, and with the cost to develop new units, this is how can we support the longevity of what we have now and support these units. And there's lots of limitations with high construction costs and capital improvement caps that tie into why we need to focus on the sustainability of our inventory now. And so there's a lot of ongoing efforts that have been happening since 2022, such as now when owners sell their home, they do a home inspection report. And along with that, APSHA has started purchasing and repairing foreclosed homes. So for example, 2 units at Woody Creek now APSHA has purchased, and they're gonna replace and resell into the inventory. So APSHA's taking some of that into their own hands, and along with that, we still are conducting the Essential Repair Pilot Grant Program, which was jointly funded by the city and the county. Since then, we've received 76 applications for that program since October, and we have approved 43 and have sent out 15 grants so far. And you'll probably get more information about that program down the road, just where we're at with it right now. A lot of grant recipients are still completing those repairs, so we don't have a full comprehensive impact evaluation of that program quite yet. And also along with that, there is a new APSHA deed restriction that allows for uncapped essential repairs. So many owners have opted to go under that new deed restriction, and along with that, all new developments will be under that. So there is that 10% cap on capital improvements for most properties, but this deed restriction allows for essential repairs to go beyond that.
I'd just like to point out that the essential repairs pilot grant program was extended to the next category out. So I think category 4.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's available to pretty much all income level rentals.
Yeah.
Liz, I know you're all doing a lot of great work on this one, and I think this one is where one of our biggest issues in our affordable housing program lies is our housing stock is aging. It's aging quickly, and it's either at the end of its useful life or past the end of its useful life. And you know what's going to happen when some of these buildings are no longer habitable. Not on a Woody Creek Trailer Park scale, but the entire building. And how do we make sure that doesn't happen again as frequently? How do we deal with it when it does happen? I don't want to be surprised as a community when a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 unit building comes to us and says, this building can't be lived in anymore. Our roof our roof structure has failed, or you know whatever it might be. I want to be prepared for that and have some good thought put into that before someone comes to us with that issue. So I want to mention that I support your work on this a lot. I encourage you to continue thinking about that issue. How do we change the behavior for the next 50 years so that HOAs and individual owners are incentivized, required, encouraged to invest in maintaining and improving their properties so that our housing stock remains of high quality and doesn't reach the end of its useful life as quickly.
Perhaps step 1 is started with that. We're having some meetings with HOAs and
Yeah.
So that'll come up here in just a little bit as one of the new action items that can provide you more detail on the work that the APSHA board and staff have been doing on it.
Yeah, that'll be a whole nother action item now,
Yeah, and
especially with this focus on it, yeah.
I think that we're limited on what we can require an HOA to do. They own their property, and we can't come in and say, well, you have to do this. So we have to get them to want to do it.
Sam?
I guess this falls in line with this, to say, you know, with like a lumberyard coming online and the need for places to be repaired, such as, I don't know what condition Truscott is in or something like that, that you might have an opportunity to move people into lumberyard temporarily or forever if it's a rental program, and then rebuild a Truscott or something like that with maybe more density, or just because it needs the repairs for it. So that's just one opportunity to think of, so that things don't fall into absolute disrepair.
Bless you.
I appreciate that idea coming forward because it is one of the questions we've had as we've brought new stock online. There's a conscious decision not to do it with the most recent 79 units, to provide an incentive or a priority bid for folks moving out of other units inside the inventory. So I think it is a policy conversation the council can have each time it's releasing new development inventory, for sure.
Yeah, and that's all I'm asking for, is a conversation every time there is something big that comes online, to see if there's something that we should be doing, movement, so that we can fix other problems in addition to solving one more.
Okay. Great. Continue. Additional development neutral program elements. So initially, this action item in the 2022 through 2026 plan was kind of the rest of the catch-all for the community development affordable housing actions, but now we've had the opportunity to build it out a bit more and just covering how we can incentivize other development neutral items, kind of like we were just discussing before. So policies to convert more free market into deed restricted units, like a deed restriction purchase program. How can we incentivize redevelopment and adding on more units to current affordable housing developments? And along with this, preserving expiring deed restrictions is called out in this item as well. So this is just community development, considering more actions to encourage redevelopment and development of affordable housing in a development neutral manner. How can we encourage more private-public partnerships? And in the original plan, there was more talk about distinguishing revenue sources as well, which is why the STR tax is called out in this item as well, since that was originally included in this action item and does support affordable housing. Okay. Next we'll go on to land banking. Similar to partnerships, not too much we can report on here in terms of the city is always looking for viable opportunities for land banking. The lumberyard was one of the previous land banking efforts that is underway. Otherwise, city staff will continue to search for any real estate that is land banking potential. Same thing as partnerships with confidentiality, so.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, next is regional collaboration, which this item has changed a bit since 2022 as well, in that the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition, which didn't have a name originally and now does, it received 501c3 status in 2022. 9 entities on the board from across the valley are here, and the Assistant City Manager, Diane, and Jen, they both serve on the board and represent Aspen and give feedback. And so since the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition received 501c3 status, they have received several grants, and I think I've updated you on this before, but I'll just go through it. So they received a $50,000 DOLA grant for just strategic planning, and they received a $100,000 IHOP grant to do a region-wide policy and code scan. And through that one, they were looking at where policies and codes from different entities on the board could better align. And I believe that's all up on their website, and they completed that work in the spring as well. And they also received a $25,000 TRAFA grant to support just additional outreach. So just to show how they've been busy and they've been working, and they've, in addition to that, have mapped out 3 programs now, including a deed restriction purchase program, which has come to City Council before, a rental support program, and a bedroom incentive program. The 2 of those that are most planned out would be the rental funds and the deed restriction program. And so in the 2024 budget, $450,000 were budgeted out for that deed restriction program, but still participation in that is still being determined by council as well, and it will come back for future conversation.
Bill? question there?
I would just encourage us to widen our perspective on regional collaboration. I think the work that West Mountain's doing is good, and our participation in it is good, and I'm interested to see where that takes us. But if and hopefully when they or someone else comes to us and says, hey, listen, we've got this site in Garfield County, Eagle County, somewhere in Pickens County, we don't have the financial resources to develop it, but we're willing to create X number of units on this site, we'll contribute the land, you know, we want you to participate in that in some way. I'd like us to be open to those kind of conversations. You know, I think one area where we're lacking is seasonal housing, and, you know, those types of residents of Aspen are not really a long-term, obviously, by their very nature, they're not a long-term part of the fabric of Aspen's community. So if they're living somewhere on a transit route and commuting into town for their one ski season that they're working in Aspen, like, I'm totally supportive of that and would encourage a regional collaboration on a project like that, and be happy to participate in a project like that. So I just encourage us to broaden our perspective. Yes, on buy downs, would like to see if that could work. Yes, on the other pilot programs, but also, could we develop something regionally with partners?
Bill, I'd like to explore that a little bit with you. Do we do that with strings attached? Do we say, hypothetically, somebody comes to us and says, we've got X number of acres, we want you to develop it. Do we say, well, we can develop it, but people have to work in Pickens County, or do we develop it for people that work in Garfield or Eagle County? Do we, if we are going to be true regional partners in housing, do we tie that to working in Aspen or Pickens County?
Yeah, I think the answer from my perspective is a simple yes. There are strings attached. I think each of those strings need to be determined based on the project, and, you know, I think that there has to be some give. You know, maybe some of the units don't have such restrictions and others do, but it's very, I think, project specific in my mind, and needs to be explored individually.
And so for the down payment assistance at Western Mountain Regional Housing is considering. That's coming back to us, I think, on when we're going to contribute. So think about how we can guarantee, if there is a way to guarantee that money stays to the benefit of the Aspen community, or if we're willing to have that money go towards workforce housing within the valley and the I-70 corridor.
Sarah?
Sure, I just challenged the council to think about, what if there's not that clawback or tie to the city of Aspen? Because that is the request coming forward to you from West Mountain this spring, or this summer. And so you as a council needs to make that policy decision. The West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition Board at this point has declined to provide that kind of any tie to specific employment, including location, and its donation acceptance. So just giving you a heads up, when this comes up, you're going to have that question before you pretty quickly.
Yeah, and just a comment that Garfield County Commissioners say that the housing crisis is Aspen's problem, and that Aspen should solve it. Yet people that are living and working in Garfield County have a hard time finding housing.
And just to call it one other thing we did end up adding to this action item as well is increased collaboration with the county as well. Since our 2023 joint work session, we've started working more with county staff working on housing, and along with that, in February, we started doing APSHA policy work sessions, and you have one next week as well, and so that was also an outcome of some of that collaboration.
Thank you.
So now we're going into the 3 new action items. So first one is community land trusts. So as you're familiar with, this is one of the few affordable housing strategies Aspen has not tried out yet, and we received $135,000 grant from DOLA to hire a consultant to do a feasibility study for Aspen. And see how a community land trust would work in our region. So the RFP is posted right now. Probably by June 2024, we'll have an idea of what we hear back from that. And the work is estimated to be complete by the end of 2025. Not much else to put on that because, of course, this is really dependent on the outcomes of the feasibility study that the consultant does. So. Next, deed restriction purchase program, which we've already brought up a few times. And this action item is really in beginning stages here in that we are looking into it. In the previous strategic plan, this was actually called out as something we weren't going to look at, and so that's why we pulled it into the action items instead. And so we are looking at something like a veil and deed model where we can come in, and one idea is at the time of closing and put a deed restriction on a house, or maybe there's some other avenues to explore there as well. And so while council will be discussing more the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition's program, we also will be exploring options for Aspen to do something similar as well.
I'm just going to interject here a little bit too, right? There's been all kinds of debate over the years I've been here about veil and deed, about whether it's just owner occupied or if there's other limitations beyond the 1,500 hours of work and owner occupancy of those. So just know that there's some really sticky policy issues around this that you'll need to contemplate in the future if you direct city staff to pursue this further, which would also require us to negotiate with the APSHA board because potentially we'd be looking for a deed restriction different than the model deed restriction from APSHA. Thank you.
Okay. And the last action item that we added in was the sustainability of HOA capital reserves. So as I mentioned earlier, we ended up pulling this out of the other action item on sustainability just to have a distinction between efforts on single family properties versus multifamily and HOAs. And especially since in the joint work session last year, VOCC and council did identify HOA capital reserves as one of the top priorities to look at as well. And the idea here is just HOAs not managing or properly saving for future large capital expenses. And we did have a work session on this last summer too. So right now, the capital reserve studies are underway. We have 33 HOAs signed up to participate right now. And the on-site visits will start happening throughout this summer to look at their properties. Right now, APSHA is also hiring an outreach and project coordinator who's going to work directly with HOAs and provide some support and just building connections with their representatives. And APSHA also has been scheduling trainings and different opportunities to connect more with HOAs as well. Like last year, they brought in I don't remember last name, but an HOA lawyer from Denver who just did a training, and I think we had a great turnout from HOA representatives, so a lot of people came out for that. And there's also just more conversations going on about how we continue doing work in this area too. And as we mentioned earlier, a lot of this will be happening with the APSHA board to start too. So, okay. So that's it for all the action items, the updated council goal, all the additions. Before we talk about any next steps, I just want to know if there's any last thoughts or slides you'd like me to revisit. Yes?
Bill?
Great presentation. Thanks, Liz and Diane. One thing that I think falls into several policy action items is the concept of allowing businesses to own some deed restricted housing units. I know there's a lot of complexity to this, and I know you touched upon it a little bit on the Forest Service lots, on where you in that in the progress or the next steps on that particular topic, but I think the beneficiaries of that are likely to be large businesses, and I'm especially concerned about small businesses when I'm thinking about this and the viability of small businesses in Aspen, and ensuring that they can have some opportunity to participate in that regard as well. So I'd like us to sort of think about that a little bit. Like, what are the current impediments for businesses owning some deed restricted units? Where could we make some changes, and should we make some changes to allow businesses to own deed restricted units? And how can we do it with an eye towards making sure that small businesses will be able to participate as well?
And I'd like to expand on that, Bill. I would like to see where a business could have put money into a rental program and have right of first use for a period of time for an APSHA qualified employee. So if a business needs an employee, they put in money for the rental programs, and I think there's been a lot of discussion that new development should be for the rental program and not for the ownership units. So to take that idea that you're suggesting and extend it or try to apply it to a rental program, and we've talked about this right of not first refusal, but right of first use for 60 days, let's say. If you can't find one of your employees to live in 60 days, and it goes to the open market, but something along the lines of how a business can put some money into the kitty and have some right of first use of the rental.
So I'll be a third council member to support that. In information and discussions going further, I don't think that we need to tackle that singularly, schedule a work session specifically, but I think that there's interest from council members to explore how business can participate in the affordable housing program.
Just for clarity, are you seeking to subsidize this?
So we've talked about this more in the context of the lumberyard. And so that is our intentions, to bring back this as a policy option as you get further along. For example, when you had to make policy decisions on Burlingame about being City of Aspen employer, worker as first priority, we plan on doing the same there. We've discussed with you having a sliding scale of participation based upon some type of business criteria that still needs to be really, I think, vetted before we can even bring you proposals. So our timeline on this work is further out. More in conjunction to when vertical construction is starting on that project, just because there's a lot of other work to get done to get to vertical construction. We prioritized that. In the past, the council had contemplated and awarded units similar to what's being described by Councilor Guth as a mitigation and entitlement process. And there was a deliberate conversation in the, early 2000s, late 90s, at least 1990s, to not do that any longer. I apologize, I can't recall the reasons why, but that's why we have a small group of units that can be sold from employer to employer under the deeds restriction right now, rather than from employer to an employee to an employee to an employee. So a small portion of the inventory works that way right now. I would suggest that you would want feedback from the APSHA board and staff about administering those type of deed restrictions. It is sort of the secondary program on the side that they have to keep tabs of. I actually don't know if it's having operational impacts for them or not. But if that timeline of vertical construction on the lumberyard is not quick enough, we would want to have clarity on that, because otherwise our intentions were to pilot with our own development project first during vertical construction, which is, probably at least 2 years, maybe 3 years away.
I'd like to address that. So I think that's good, Sarah, and I appreciate that. But I think that this is and the reason I saved this for the end is that it touches a lot of these action items. One of the new action items is this community land trust concept, and this goes along the lines of what Ward was suggesting potentially. Maybe there's a way for businesses to kick in money to a given project that then they have certain priority rights in. Then there's a angle that we should be looking on this of existing ownership and existing rental properties, new ownership and new rental properties. They're all so unique and so different. And I think the question has to be asked is there an opportunity for businesses to participate in this given type of deed restricted housing? or is it just too complex or unsustainable, or this is not where we should be focusing our efforts? And my goal is to get this into this action plan so that it is discussed and contemplated as we're analyzing all this new policy and considering these new things. I don't want to look at this only from the perspective of the lumberyard or only from the perspective of the community land trust. I really think that there's opportunities, I don't know what they are yet, but there's wide-reaching opportunities here where it can be a win-win for business, ensure that there are, that there's an opportunity for small mom-and-pop type of business to continue to exist in Aspen, which is not easy, and large businesses also can continue to thrive in Aspen, and for it to benefit our housing program. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. I think everything can benefit here. So I just want that to be embedded in this document so that as we're analyzing all this new policy and all these new efforts, that we're thinking about that piece of it too.
Yeah, Bill, we've heard from previous councils, objections to the company town concept that they have their claws into you, and if you don't do what I tell you to do, you're going to lose your housing. But there are many examples of how school districts, fire protection districts, sanitation districts have all dealt with this, and so that as the objections are raised, that we should be that we should show how those objections have been answered.
Good point.
I think my question for council would be, one is if you do want to include this, what kind of priority is this? The reason I say that, so we could put it in as a placeholder for future consideration, as similar to the piece in the community development about dimensional changes, right? You've said, not right now, don't take it off. With this one, right, I think your levers are likely cash, so some kind of subsidy or property that you own, which would be, as Sarah's talked about, lumberyard or city-owned rentals currently at Truscott, Meralt, ACI. And the reason I say this is you are looking at the city's sole affordable housing employee who's working on new policy considerations, and I think you've given us some good direction on some really exciting things about HOA sustainability, as well as looking at deed restriction purchase, existing, new, that the city could do itself, existing, new, and maybe buying some nearer term expiring deed restrictions. And my concern would be that if we made this a priority right now, it would crowd out some other stuff.
You know, we continue to discuss how our inventory is aging, how it's losing its viability. Is there an opportunity to explore the opportunity that a business put some money into rehabilitating a Truscott or an ACI, that they do have a priority for use of that, to find a way to fund these repairs from small businesses in return for some kind of preferential rental?
So the good news is you're absolutely keeping up on your properties. Right, you're the owners, and you are doing a good job on that. Thanks to our team and to Pete. I think that question, Ward, is an interesting one for would an owner of a property that has older rental units want to explore partnering? I think that's an interesting question. And I'm not saying that this isn't a good idea. I'm not saying, we can add it in here as another page if you want us to explore that. I'm trying to make sure that we leave the table with some indications of priorities for what, and I work with Liz as well, but essentially this is a lot of Liz's work too.
So I'm happy to take a stab at answering that. Diane, I don't think that it should be a separate action item. I do think that it should be an interwoven concept into all the action items and saying, is this an opportunity, whatever we're working on at the given moment, is that an opportunity to explore some partnership with the private sector, whether that be private sector developers, private sector employers, or otherwise. Is there an angle there? Yes or no? this is akin to when we did the council retreat and we talked about everything should be looked at through the environmental lens. I think we should also look at this. Is there an opportunity for partnership with the private sector in some way, shape, or form in this effort that we're doing? I think that's how we're gonna be most effective. And then to directly answer your question about, are we expecting to subsidize this? I think that's a complex question, Diane. Like, de facto subsidized deed restricted housing is subsidized by the community. So all of it, yes, is subsidized to a certain extent. But should we be looking at this, like, should we be paying business, should we be helping businesses financially to own units? Not necessarily. Like, maybe the businesses should be helping us to own units, or helping specific HOAs, or helping the housing fund in general. Like, there's so many different ways to extrapolate this, and I don't think we should be looking at it as like, how can we give somebody money or help them to own units? Does that make sense?
Hang on, Ward. Sarah?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I think a couple of things here is, first of all, we don't need all this clarified tonight. So I just want to give some breathing room to a very complex issue. But the second thing that I will say is, and I've already heard it come up here, is there's quite frankly a values debate around this proposal in the community about workforce housing versus community housing. And I don't think you should beat around the bush about having that conversation as a governing body, because that will direct the priority. And so I encourage, when the time is right, that conversation occur as a foundation to these other decisions. Thank you.
Word, comment?
Yeah, Bill, I think we may have to prioritize this to some point. If we have a plug-in policy so that as an opportunity arises, we have to have something that's baked, that we can say that is, been considered from multiple angles, that the lawyers have a way of figuring it out, that it's like the government doesn't give money to ideas, they give money to shovel-ready projects. So if we are going to be able to incorporate this into make a nexus between the sustainability of an old property and the possibility of a business putting money into the kitty to restore that, we have to have a policy in place where we can do it, because otherwise that opportunity is gonna be gone because, the time factor involved. So maybe I'm suggesting a discussion about how do we prioritize this? Do we have, do we give staff some priority to formulate a policy so it's ready if the opportunity arises?
Yeah, I really appreciate that notion and agree with it, Ward. I just think that it should be done in addition to considering business and private sector partners across all of this, because these ideas are so new, and they're not fleshed out yet. They're not shovel ready. So if we're considering that as considering partnership and collaboration with private sector and businesses throughout all these new ideas, I think there will be some shovel-ready stuff that comes out of it. I just don't, I don't have the solutions yet, so
Yeah,
I don't know if anyone does.
For us to be able to do this, we have to prioritize Liz's time and other people and staff's time to come up with something that we can plug in if we need it.
Agree.
Right, and I don't think that at this moment or at this meeting right now is the time for us to determine that this goes to the head of a line of a priority list when we have got a workload and project list going on. I want more information about this, without a doubt. What Sarah is saying, and it may not be quick enough for us, but, the lumberyard gives us an excellent opportunity for trying this program out, having these conversations as we lead up to it. If that's not quick enough, then I think we need more information back about, about the work plan and about what falls off and how this impacts Liz's workload. So I think that the suggestion is great. I think this is a conversation that's gone on many times. It's failed to gain any traction for different reasons for different people, But I'm interested in more information. I think that this could be a valuable tool as we go forward, but I don't want to just step in at this time without knowledge of and more information about workload, priorities as they sit, what even the rest of 2024 looks like. I mean, but you're hearing from a majority of council that this is an idea that we are intrigued about bringing into our conversations, and not just in the simple form. And that's the issue here, is that there's a simple way to look at this and say, you know what, we could figure out our build cost for a unit, and we could say to a business, here, you can buy it for this amount. That's just a simple way to look at it, but unfortunately, it's probably not that simple. And as you were saying, Bill, there's different scenarios where it may exercise itself differently. So I'm interested in more information. We're interested in more information before we say, hey, this is priority. Let's do this. I don't know, Sarah, if there's opportunity for us to learn more in an information-only memo that kind of recaps the scope of this conversation.
I think we'll have some follow-up conversation. What I hear is this is not a pressing issue here, particularly for this Q2 or in Q3. That's what I'm getting from this right now, that a majority of you want a more thoughtful conversation, and you need some information to help inform how you want to structure that conversation. Is that a correct?
Well, again, I personally want to make sure that this concept of partnering with businesses, with nonprofits, with private sector developers, is deeply embedded in this update to the Affordable Housing Strategic Plan, so that it is contemplated when we're exploring all these new policies, when we're tackling these challenges, when we're looking 50 years out into the future. I think that's what I'm hoping to get across tonight, and then and hopefully we can have a majority consensus on that, on embedding that concept and making sure that those thoughts are occurring to people and those conversations are happening as we're getting more granular. That's my hope.
Well, you know, and you've expressed this on similar different development items, so I think that it is incorporated in a lot of the language that we're using around a lot of the development that we're doing. I'm wondering if under partnerships, if this would be something that would be,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, may I speak?
yeah, please.
Yeah, sure, it's page 20. You know, and that second bullet, we believe the staff captured this concept with partnerships for affordable housing typically fall into these three categories: between government jurisdictions, between government and nonprofit, and between government and private sector organizations. So we did not list it as a specific next step, but we have to focus on the private sector, but it does say to continue to look for additional partnerships as they present themselves. So, don't go out shopping for them at the moment. Our plate is rather full with the pipeline that you have asked us to be working on. So if that is really where that course adjustment happens, if you feel like it's of higher priority than our work on land banking and our work on partnerships and our work, on our governmental and nonprofit partnerships, and if it supersedes some of the policy work with the lumberyard. That's all we're asking is let us know where it fits in line, and I'm hearing you say you need more information back before you can tell me that. At least from 3 of you, you've stated that here in this conversation.
Yep. Ward?
Yeah, every time we ask for more information, it pushes things down 60 and 90 days. So at some point, we just have to make a decision and we'll go forward with it. And Bill earlier complained about how long it was taking to get something accomplished on a hearing officer, and it's every single item that we deal with in government takes time, and every time we want more studies, it shoves things back a year or 6 months. So I think I personally want to move forward, and if there are adjustments that have to be made in policies, we can make those in the future, but if we don't do anything, it just delays making progress.
So would your suggestion be then to include language under partnerships?
Well, I think it'd be in partnerships and sustainability, and as Bill has stated, you know, that all of these kind of dovetail into each other. It's hard to, but if we have this as a tool that we can use, I don't know what, only information I would ask is if we prioritize this, what falls off the back end? What do we lose? Yeah, are we gonna delay the land banking? Are we gonna, what are we gonna delay, if we, push this further up the line?
I think if you're talking about adding it as a bullet point that says something to the effect of, evaluate, when implementing any of these programs, so whether we come back to you with a proposal for a City of Aspen deed restriction program that a local could put a deed restriction on their house, get X number of dollars, and they don't have to do anything else, they don't have to move or anything. If we come back with that we say, hey, we're going to include right, it's not the focus of the program, but an element for how could this work if a business wanted to participate in this? I think if you're talking about that version, we can put that as a bullet point. If you're talking about instead that we would then say, okay, we're going to work on that kind of deed restriction program, except we want to focus on businesses. That might be the distinction.
And my suggestion here is to create the bullet point so that that conversation and working out those details happens in the future along with the rest of what's going on in the plan. That's what I'm saying. Is yes, let's, plant a flag today and the work starts, but I don't want to go to Diane's second suggestion and say, hey, stop everything we're doing and start looking for these business avenues. I think it can run concurrently, but I do support a bullet point that kind of, that actually iterates it. I support that.
I support that.
Agree. I think as long as it's woven into the fabric as one of the tools that we're using on everything that we're analyzing, I'm very happy with that. And I wish, Ward, I'm in support of everything you're saying. I just don't have like one idea to get behind saying, this is what we should have Liz working on. I just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, there are no silver bullets, unfortunately.
Right, and I think it's a little myopic to just focus on one thing at this time, because I think that there should and can be a variety of different tools for both businesses and individuals and nonprofits to use. So it sounds like we're all in agreement that this should be one of the tools in the tool chest. And
So this is something we can incorporate, because next steps are going to be taking feedback we received from you and doing another overview of the update we just compiled, editing it, and then bringing it back for a resolution. So today I think we got a good amount of feedback, but of course if you have additional things to add, you're welcome to email me, or if you catch things as you're reading through it again, you're welcome to send it my way as we are going through all the edits to this update as well.
And I know Liz said this in that, just because the last time we did this, I did receive at the 11th hour, because I said, if you have other things, send them to me. And what I got were major policy changes. So please send Liz typos, wording, things like that.
But those should go to Diane, just in line with our agreed upon expectations with council, that below a department director, council is not emailing directly.
Okay,
So they
that's
need
a
to
good
come to
idea.
you, Diane.
So
Great.
do
I'll
not
just
email
state
Liz
one
that.
thing off the top at 30,000 feet. I like workforce housing better than affordable housing.
agree.
Disagree. If we want to have that conversation, let's schedule a work session for later this year. Because this is just, because we could tease that out a while, but I think that's a community conversation that deserves more than just throwing it out. All right, hey, were there any things in the bike rack? Bill had a couple of ideas. Do you need any clarity on whether council is supportive of some of the items that came out? For example, Bill made a statement about not seeking establishment of new sources and such. Do you need any clarity on that?
I can run through that list real quick. Sam had suggested that on page 7, we might want to add a transit-oriented development priority, or mention that, so we can weave that in here, somewhere in here around the importance of transit-oriented development.
Raise your hand if you're supportive, I guess. Is that the easiest?
Well, I didn't know if we needed to do a fourth priority, but under third priority, outside of city limits, it has 3 bullet points, and that could be included as the 4th bullet point there.
You go with it?
Same difference.
Great. The second one was Actually, I think we're already doing that, which was looking at, well, actually, they're separate. Bill had asked to look at affordable housing credits for existing properties. And I had added the idea of what Liz pointed out correctly, which is already in there, so which is us looking at a program for deed restriction for existing properties.
My thoughts on that is, housing credits are used for mitigation for development, and I would like to see, the deed restrictions extended to be available not to mitigate for new growth, but to be available for, existing employees.
Could you clarify that word? I don't understand.
Yeah, the mitigation program, it's, every time you have a FTE, you're mitigating 60%. That means there's 40% that you're not mitigating, or it's 65%, depending on if it's commercial or residential. So to have a housing credit program that's available in mitigation for new growth is, you're backsliding. So what I prefer is to have deed restricted units be available not as mitigation, because I personally feel that we don't need to be generating new jobs, because we're having a hard enough time filling the jobs that we need. We have restaurants that can't stay open 7 days a week. We have bus routes that can't be maintained. And by adding growth, you're putting more stresses on that. And by incentivizing housing credits, it's mitigation for new growth.
Council, I think we understand the concept at the staff level that you're saying. Help us find some incentives for buy down of free market into deed restriction. What could those look like? What are the financial resources that may or may not be required? Is there a way to have a limited amount of the community's tax funds necessary to do that? So how are we leveraging and educating, for example, about some tax benefits to property owners that may be valuable for them? Things of that nature. So I think we can capture something broader in that rather than limiting ourselves to a conversations around the credits program, because I do agree with you, there's a clear nexus between credits and new development. And so I just want to ensure that if that were to change, it's a fundamental change to the credits program. And we should do that probably in light of the entire credits program, including looking at who's eligible for credits. Because what happens if it's a child care provider that's nonprofit that comes to you, for example? All right, we want to be able to work with individuals in those situations.
And you know, we just experienced it with the Josephine DeLinsick, where we got the deed to be able to use the property, but the person that was living there could live there, what's it called, a living...
Life estate.
We provided a
Reverse
life
mortgage?
estate, yes. There's a few different tools like that we do use, and we enter into careful conversations, as you've asked us to consider, related to any type of acquisition work, about whether that's an appropriate tool to recommend for that negotiation. So
Thank you.
we can document some of that and figure out where exactly, which action item we think it best fits under, but I'm happy to follow up with staff on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think the last one was, Bill had indicated on page 18, which is develop financial resources. At the beginning of next steps, it says continue seeking establishment of new sources. And I think that's a general statement representing the aggressive goals council has in front of us. And then it says collaborate with other jurisdictions to further a regional tax to support greater housing preservation and development. So just wanted to check on that one. And Bill did indicate that he was supportive of collaborating with, oh no, sorry, that was the next item about collaborating with other governments who have land. So sorry, that one was specifically about seeking to establish new sources of revenue to support affordable housing.
Yeah, so I was going to suggest to change the language slightly to include evaluating existing sources. Because as Sarah was saying, it's not just about creating and establishing new sources, but it's about the evaluation of the allocation that we have going on. But then when I read past the colon in there, collaborating with other jurisdictions for a regional tax would indicate to me that we'd really be talking about, some sort of county effort and supporting county effort. So,
Yeah, I'm not good there. And of course, on a given project, we're gonna need to explore revenue sources, whether we have the existing capacity to support them, or accomplish them or not. But I'm not good with a proactive approach to creating new taxation. And I'm also good with, Ward brought up the concept of grants. I'm totally okay with putting resources into exploring grants. Not okay with putting resources into exploring new means of taxation.
well, it's not a lot of resource and it's not a lot of FTE resource either. So I guess I'll just go around the table for input. Council members, what are your feelings on that bullet point, next steps, continue seeking establishment of new sources, collaborate with other jurisdictions to further a regional tax to support. This is very specific in this language. This is not broad, this is specific.
Well, a new tax requires a vote, so it's up to the people.
So you're okay leaving the language in as it is?
Yeah, because any new tax requires.
John?
I don't think we should take anything off the table. I think it should be left in there.
Sam?
I'm not as concerned with it because it does need to come forward to us and to the voters, but I don't think staff does need to spend a lot of time on it per se.
I don't think there is, and like I said, this is specific to a regional tax, so I don't know a whole bunch that's going. I'm okay with no change to this at this time. But with respect to Bill's comments. Diane, any others?
The last was, Bill had a comment about, that I would recommend we add either to regional collaboration or the partnerships page about proactively seeking out partnerships with other local governments, and I think your insinuation was who have land, right? That, for the partnerships, the one that you and Ward.
That was one example that he was given.
Yeah, well, it's not just government.
Or local.
There's local landowners that have land. The Aspen Institute has land. I know you're talking to them. We've talked about private developers that have land and projects that are teed up. I think there's a lot of those opportunities, and just being as proactive as we can be within reason to see if we can get those projects built.
And just for the benefit of the rest of the council, you need to clarify, the Aspen Institute and some adjoining property owners are contemplating being a land use applicant. It is not a partnership in the sense of this. It is coming through our regulatory process.
Yeah, and to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that every one of these could or should be a partner. I was suggesting that we should be proactive in figuring out how to get them done, and that can take a variety of different forms.
And I think the land trust can be used as a tool in there.
Okay, so we're gonna take this feedback that we received today, take another look at the plan, start incorporating, and then you'll expect an updated version. Yeah, and then eventually, of course, adopting it via resolution when the time comes as well. Any questions on it in the meantime?
Only one comment for you, which is job well done. This is heavy material, a lot of it, and you covered that very efficiently. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Liz. Thank you, Diane.
Thanks, Liz.
Mr. Mayor, if I might add, we recently had the opportunity to promote Liz in her role because of the exceptional work. So that is something that we were able to recently do. And the other staff note I'll give you today, it's Tyler's first day as a Public Works Director. So, two big things to celebrate on
Yeah.
the staff side recently, these great accomplishments.
Congrats to both of you.
Congrats and thank you. Our next item? All right. That's what I was like, Mike's here. So the next item on our agenda requires a special meeting, so I'll call to order for a special meeting. We called it for 4 o'clock just so that we had plenty of time. We'll call it to order now at 10 minutes to 6. And can we have a roll call for attendance, please?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Present.
Counselor Rose,
Here.
Mayor Tory.
And I'm here.
Mr. Mayor, staff's requesting that council go into executive session pursuant to CRS Section 246402-4A, purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real personal or other property interests. For B, conferences with an attorney for the local public body for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions. And for E, determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiation, and instructing negotiators. The specific items of discussion involve the following: discussion of misdemeanor classification, code changes, and environmental design for code enforcement, ongoing litigation, including the Centennial Owners Association versus City of Aspen et al., and the Lake House Aspen LLC versus the City of Aspen, and potential litigation regarding demolition appeals filed by the following applicants: Gregory Melville Revocable Living Trust, Claren Reed Stillwell, Christine Lee Pope, Lake House Aspen, 981 King Street LLC, and Survivors Trust created under the Campbell Family Trust. Council elects to go into an executive session. The executive session will be recorded, and the recording will be maintained by the clerk for a period of not less than 90 days. Perhaps unusual to our standard process, the work session has been scheduled to resume if council so desires following. The work session has been scheduled to be resumed following the executive session to discuss the misdemeanor classification code changes and environmental design, if you so wish. That was the original work session item. We inserted the executive session in between that. If you were to come back and discuss the work session in public, we would return up here for that work session item, and we would continue this matter on GrassRoots. But yes, it was a work session item.
Jim, I was going to make public comment available as this is a special meeting. Is that appropriate?
If you wish, or you should, because
So I appreciate that. So before we have a motion for executive session, if you would allow me to open the floor for public comment. This is a special meeting, and public comment is available. If there's any members of the public that wish to speak, I'm looking in room and seeing none. Looking online. And with that, I'll bring it back to council table. Thank you. Thank you. You have citations by our city attorney. Could take a motion for executive session?
Comment first, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I am not interested in talking about Lake House Aspen LLC versus City of Aspen, nor any of the potential litigation regarding demolition appeals filed by the following applicants. I'd rather wait for them to come back in resolution or talk about them in public, and I'd like them to be taken off the executive session tonight.
Thanks for that.
I also have a comment. I'm curious what the reasoning for executive session for the misdemeanor classification code changes is.
The city attorney's office feels that there are a number of issues that would justify discussion by the city attorney's office regarding potential code changes for classification as well as code enforcement. So it's the city attorney's office has requested the opportunity to give legal advice on those potential code changes in those areas of discussion.
And is that any information in addition to the memo that you've already provided, that you'll be presenting tonight?
Not necessarily. We will go through the memo and discuss those issues. The environmental code enforcement or environmental design for code enforcement may be a little additional information, but it is our intent to go through what we provided, make sure it's all understood and discussed properly with our legal advice. So this does involve specific legal advice under section 4.0 or 4B of the Open Meetings Law.
All right, thank you for clarifying that. I'd like to limit that as much as possible to true legal advice and not information that should be shared with the public in that conversation about reclassifying misdemeanors. Unless anyone else has any discussion points, I'm happy to make a motion.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I agree, Bill. I want to use our executive session only for those, not just topics, but items on those topics that are appropriate for executive session and limit it to that. So I would like to leave everything on the agenda for our executive session, but make sure that we all are aware that it will be limited to just those items that are listed on our agenda.
Yeah, I'm also not supportive of the going into executive session on the litigation items related to the demolition allotments. I've spent enough of my time talking about resolving issues related to this failed program and no interest in spending any additional time on it. I think we should eliminate the program. Therefore, we would not need to spend any of our time talking about settling or fighting it. So I'm not willing to spend my time on that.
Okay. You know, once again, this is just an opportunity for us to talk about things that may be sensitive and also may be able to get some progress on some things. So I would really request that we do have those on our agenda. Allow us to go into executive session with those on our agenda so that we can at least just hear on the specifics of the litigation and get that information. We do not need to expand that conversation at all, but I would request that you do allow us to have these conversations with each other and our city attorney in executive session.
Respect the request, but respectfully decline.
Okay, I have to say this then. You know, it's funny because I know your end goal, or I believe your end goal is progress, transparency, and the like. And this process allows us exactly that, and allows us to make some progress and get information. And yet you don't want us to be availed to that information in executive session. I find it just a use of, I think it thwarts progress. And it may be in the name of process for you, but I think you're maybe thwarting progress. I don't know why you are so worried about it, but I would really love to have conversations with you. I would love to respect your position at city council and our city attorney and kind of be able to have discussions. So I find that kind of not having the ability to have some conversations in executive session, as brief as they may be, I feel it's just obstructionist. I wish you guys would, just allow us to have a conversation. It can be as limited as you want. But I would again request, leave them on the agenda. Let's talk about it. If you guys can't talk with each other, I just think it thwarts progress in us working together, that's all.
I'm okay to talk about it in public, but I think the public needs to know that a failed program has been created, and all you have to do is file a lawsuit against the city and request a settlement, and then you get what you want. That's all we're gonna be discussing in executive session, so why shouldn't we discuss that in public? Is, hey, you want a demo allotment, just sue us, come and get one, we'll hand it out to you, and we'll undermine this whole failure of a program that we've created. It's nothing personal, and I respect your,
It better not be personal because this isn't personal. But I don't know what you just were talking about. That's not really the intention of the executive session, and so that's not really the intention, but you're painting a picture that is not accurate. Ward, comments?
Well, first of all, I take exception that it's a failed program. That's your opinion, and I understand where you're coming from on that. But we have a settlement agreement that might conceivably give people what they're asking for without the need to sue the city. The threat is there. If we don't have the ability to discuss with our attorney what our options are for negotiating a settlement, then we're left with coming back here on Tuesday and either listening to a bunch of appeals or saying, sue us, take it to the courts and we'll decide. But either way, it's going to be years, I think, before it will be settled if it goes to the court. And by not allowing a discussion this evening, we're forfeiting the opportunity to solve something immediately. Or within the
that's not
next
true. The settlement could be presented to us in public at the next regular meeting, and it could be discussed in public.
And it could delay, and anyway, I get where you guys sit. All I'm saying is, there's possible fruitful discussions that we can have that can actually make progress and move things forward. And I wish we could have those conversations. Otherwise, you're potentially causing delay for any resolution here. But
I would emphasize that council cannot make decisions in an executive session. There are settlement proposals on the table. They will be brought back on the 14th.
yeah, absolutely. It'll all be discussed in public. That's exactly what I'm saying.
I was asking for the opportunity to address some of the legal issues that legal counsel is authorized to provide counsel in an executive session. The discussions in public would be limited.
And I would like to hear those.
So let's try a motion for the executive session and see where it goes.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session minus the Lake House Aspen LLC versus City of Aspen and minus all the potential litigation regarding demolition appeals filed by the following applicants listed beneath what I'm just saying.
Second.
So further discussion, I'm going to vote no so that we can try another motion.
We need a roll call vote.
We will. Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call vote for the motion on the floor, please?
Counselor Doyle,
No.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
No.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
No.
I would note that to go into an executive session requires 4 votes of council,
So
4 affirmative votes.
I would make a motion to go into executive session with all items that were in the citations by the city attorney.
I'll second.
A motion, a second. Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call vote for executive session with all agenda items?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
No.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
No.
Mayor Tory.
Yes. All right.
Requires 4 votes to go into executive session.
So I guess we don't talk about anything? We schedule another executive session for another time?
If that's what you want, that's fine.
That's not what I want. I told you what I wanted. And again, you know, I find it, I just find it, I don't know what the word is, disrespectful. I mean, if you wanted to talk about something, I'd support you.
You're making it personal, it's not.
I'm not. I'm saying, hey, in this setting, our job is here to do business on behalf of our public. And you're saying that you don't want to do that. I'm saying, let's do it. We can come out of the executive session. We can share on whatever topic you want.
I just want to talk about when the resolution's up for it on Tuesday. I don't want to talk about an executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I would recommend if council would be willing to go into executive session on the other 2 items, that does seem to have consensus, which would be the discussion of misdemeanor classification and code changes in the Centennial Owners Association, that you do so.
Your Honor, I see that as a backing into the first motion, and I wouldn't support it.
Okay.
You know, I guess this will just put off the other work that we need to get done.
You can blame us, and then I would blame you. It's the same. So,
We'll call another executive session for the next time we get together, I guess.
okay.
You may resume your, adjourn your special meeting at this point.
We could also continue our work session on the misdemeanor classification stuff and discuss that publicly.
I wouldn't put my legal team in that position. They've requested that they have a moment to discuss with you some other items, and I wouldn't do that.
At this point, it does seem to be appropriate to adjourn your special meeting.
We will.
I move we adjourn the special meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Yeah. Two things. One, I wish you would have contacted me earlier. And two, I just think that, I don't know, simple conversations, but.
I just will point out that this was added on 3:30 p.m. on Friday, so it was like a last-minute thing. I only was able to discuss it with Jim.
It's only been 3 days, so it's all good, man.
Yes.
You could have talked to me today.
I talked to Jim earlier today, and that's,
Could have talked, I would have appreciated a phone call. Can we have a roll call vote for adjourning our special meeting, please?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes?
Counselor Rose.
yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes.
Sam, I think it would have been a good idea to try to inform the rest of the council, just as I tried to inform you that we had some people that wanted to express their opinion on a ceasefire and gave you the heads up. And I didn't want it to be another blindside like the flag issue, so.
Nobody likes being blindsided.
I wish things weren't so last minute all the time, then.